Our epistle today is taken from the book of Judith. If you have not recently read the book of Judith, I encourage you to do so. The book of Judith is a fantastic story. And why does Holy Mother Church present this passage from the book of Judith to us is because Judith herself is a foreshadowing of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Judith herself is a fulfillment of the prophecy made in Genesis, where we hear that a woman will come to crush the head of the serpent, and Judith is one of the fulfillments of that prophecy. But the way the Catholic Church treats the Old Testament with regard to the New is that the Old Testament explains what's happening in the New. What happens in the New Testament is so chock full of meaning. There's no time to explain in telling the story. There's simply no time to explain everything that's happening. It's far too deep, far too significant. So the entire Old Testament is used then as that way of unpacking ahead of time, as it were, what the New Testament, what it means and what's going on. And so therefore, the book of Judith is an explanation of who the Blessed Virgin Mary is. If we want to know something about who the Blessed Virgin Mary is, we have to read the book of Judith. And so therefore today, I'm asking you to do that, because it's a good day to do it. And if you haven't done it, it's going to be very educational to do that and remind ourselves what is being said there. And besides that, it's just a good story. It's an incredible story. The epistle that we have today, we don't really get the meaning because we don't have its context. Reading the book, it's a very short book. It won't be difficult to read. So anyway, I suggest that you do that. Judith decapitated the general of the army. Now that's, some of the Bible stories are pretty salty. This is one of them. Judith, and to add insult to injury, she used his own sword to decapitate him. And then she walked out of the enemy camp with his head. But in order to do that, to accomplish that task, she put her own life at risk. She put her own life at serious peril. And then we understand that if this is an explanation of who the Blessed Virgin Mary is, the Blessed Virgin Mary using the language of the original prophecy that she will crush the head of Satan or the serpent, then we understand that, nowhere in the New Testament do we see the Blessed Virgin Mary decapitating anyone or crushing anyone or taking anyone's weapon and wielding it. We don't see any actions like that. But the book of Judith and the story of this remarkable woman, Judith, is to explain on a physical level what's happening with the Blessed Virgin Mary on a spiritual level. That realm that is much less easily described and talked about. The Church needs the Blessed Virgin Mary to crush the head of the serpent. We as individuals need the Blessed Virgin Mary to crush the head of the serpent in our own individual lives. We absolutely need the Blessed Virgin Mary to do this. Not physically, perhaps, but spiritually, always. As St. Thomas makes clear in his teaching, grace always builds upon nature. Grace builds on nature. Grace is not a replacement for nature. Grace builds on nature. Grace and nature do not mix into some kind of hybrid mixture between the two. They remain separate. Grace builds on nature. Nature is the foundation of grace. Grace is the completion of nature. Like the basement of a house and the first story of the house would be a grotesque incompletion of itself if it was only a basement. But the first floor of the house, which is the main part, can't exist without the foundation. Grace builds on nature. Now we can ask the Blessed Virgin Mary to crush the head of Satan in our life, and to do that we are asking her to give us grace. But that grace can only be effective and fruitful in our life if it has a foundation on nature. So what is the natural foundation upon which Our Lady can act with her grace? And that is, we might describe it as a goodwill. Our part is a goodwill. It is entirely possible to ask Our Lady to come do something in our life without the goodwill to have that grace be effective. We might bring up an example from St. Augustine. He says, Lord, make me chaste, but just not yet. Well, so there's that grace. God is giving us the grace to be chaste, but if he doesn't really want it, it's not going to be effective. The requisite goodwill is simply absent. So if we ask the Blessed Virgin Mary to come crush the head of the serpent in our life, we have to give that grace a foundation of our goodwill being manifest by virtuous decisions. That those virtuous decisions must be present in order for the grace to be effective. Therefore, when we ask her to crush the head of Satan in our life, then, and we agree and we really are putting our goodwill into practice, then fruit can be derived from those gifts of grace. Then, in ever so small increments, we can make progress in our relationship with God. We can make progress in our love of God and progress in our love of neighbor. This is the will of God for us, that we progress. But God asks us to make little steps. So we don't need to be afraid. We don't need to be afraid of God that he's going to ask too much. He only asks little steps. So make little but good resolutions. Ask Our Lady to help, but then make good resolutions as a result of that. Now, so we can say, and we can be stagnant in our spiritual life by saying, well, I pray the rosary every day, so I've just put it in Our Lady's hands and she's going to take care of everything. Well, maybe as a fruit of the rosary, she wants you to be more humble and listen to your spouse. And when your spouse says, hey, you know what? I don't like the way you become when you have that third or fourth beer or glass of wine. Maybe Our Lady's giving you the grace to be more humble, to listen more seriously to the advice given by your loving spouse. If you're not willing to listen and to be humble and to make a change, then the grace of the rosary lies ineffective, unfruitful. It lies unused. No progress will ever be made. We need to pray the rosary every day. But we need more than that. We need to correspond with the graces that are asked for and the graces that are received. And that correspondence is on the natural level, on the level of our will. We need to say yes. We need to be willing to make little changes, one by one, in order to progress. And this is what Our Lady can do for us. Let us not be satisfied with the status quo. Let us reach for and ask Our Lady to help us make a change for the better by, in that spiritual way, crushing the head of Satan. Now, in our gospel today, we have the flip side of the coin. Our Lady doesn't come to St. Elizabeth with the incarnate Christ in her womb to visit Elizabeth and her in utero child, St. John the Baptist. Our Lady doesn't come in order to crush the head of Satan in Elizabeth's life. It's not necessary. She comes for her other role, and that is the flip side of the coin, and that is bringing the incarnate Christ to Elizabeth and John. Our Lady has that role also, that her Son, and this spoken of again in the book of Genesis, that her Son would be the Savior, and that her Son then is none other than God Himself. So we ask Our Lady then to do both roles in our life, to crush Satan on the one hand, but on the positive side of the coin, to bring Christ to us, to bring us to Christ and Christ to us. That is her role. And as we celebrate her assumption today, body and soul into heaven, this assumption of her body and soul into heaven when her earthly pilgrimage had come to an end, this is a pledge of our own future glory, to be with her forever, with her Son and God the Father, reigning with her gloriously in heaven. That's her pledge to us, God's pledge to us, that this is our destiny, to be with her. Not only our Queen, but also our Mother. The assumption is Our Lady assuming and being assumed into heaven. This is her taking up her rightful place. But it's a pledge that this too is our rightful place also, if we are devoted to her, and if we allow her to bring Christ to us and to crush the head of Satan in our life. God love you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.